Clever. OK, Representative Enrages monument destroying left with call to remove one more racist icon. As violent leftists continue their rampage to destroy every last historical monument they deem offensive, an Oklahoma Republican representative announced that he's all for removing racist icons. However, liberal hypocrites were soon outraged over which hateful monument he brilliantly suggested we destroy next. Although the Democratic Party was responsible for raising not only the many idols dedicated to slavery and racial purity but the white supremacist organizations we condemn today, they seem to think that destroying these monuments of their past will wipe out all remnants of their true nature. While the Democrats of the past aligned themselves with groups like the Nazi Socialist Party and Ku Klux Klan, among other supremacist movements, they've now joined the ranks of the world's most oppressive and violent militant religion. OK, Representative John Bennett has never been one to shy away from truth or submit to political correctness. In fact, he's notorious for outraging both Muslims and their ignorant liberal allies. Seeing the violent left's relentless destruction of historical statues under the guise of snuffing out racism and hate, Bennett was immediately reminded of an even more hateful and racist type of monument erected in the U.S. each day. According to Coco, Bennett brazenly took to Facebook, issuing a perfect response to the destructive leftists and their ironically named Antifa branch. Suggesting another hate-filled monument's removal, Bennett simply yet cleverly stated, "If we're removing Confederate monuments after the Civil War, I think we should also be removing mosques after 9/11. Expectedly, Bennett's thought-provoking statement, which was meant to spark meaningful debate, enraged emotional leftists and so-called moderate Muslims. The opposition replied to Bennett's rightful opinion with demands for him to be removed from office or charged with hate speech, a politically correct charge that's goal is to obliterate free speech. Incredibly, Bennett didn't back down in the slightest. Refusing to become subservient to a fascist ideology, the GOP rep. Instead issued a bold reply that perfectly summed up the left's hypocrisy and ignorance on the importance of remembering history. Left-leaning Far didn't publish Bennett's response but immediately attempted to whitewash Islam's unbelievably violent history and supremacist fundamentals by interviewing a Muslim spokesman who propagated lies that the majority of Muslims don't actually believe. Enrages purposefully makes no mention of the Quran's violent and hateful commands toward unbelievers, especially verses 328, 4-144, and 551. All of which warn Muslims never to make friends with non-Muslims. He also deliberately fails to mention that verses 9:73, 48 hours 29 minutes, and 66-9 mandate that Muslims must be harsh toward and fight against non-Muslims but be merciful toward fellow Muslims. Bennett is absolutely correct in his equation. Islam is a hateful ideology that spews religious and racial supremacism throughout its pages. The Quran repeatedly refers to Jews, Christians, atheists, and polytheists as apes, pigs, stupid animals, cattle, vile creatures, perverts, unclean transgressors, and hell fodder. Like the racist rhetoric spewed at KKK meetings and neo-Nazi gatherings, the same racial supremacy is taught from the altars of mosques as imams quote from the hate-filled passages of the Quran and Hadith. Since the Prophet Muhammad was hailed as Islam's perfect man, he was the only human being charged by Allah to dictate and model the commands of the Quran. He did this not only by discriminately slaughtering non-Muslims but expressed his hatred and disgust of black Africans, many of whom he enslaved. In fact, the Prophet, who is revered by 1.6 billion Muslims today, owned dozens of black slaves and even preached his sermons from a pulpit built on by one of them. While Muhammad's disdain for blacks has spanned the centuries, as 14 million Africans are still enslaved by Arabs today, his hatred for Jews is the most evident throughout the Quran and Hadith. Aside from labeling the Jewish race apes and pigs, Muhammad taught that Allah would not reward Muslims with the last day until they have killed every last Jew on earth. This is why many Muslim nations allied with Adolf Hitler and the Nazis during the Holocaust and why the Muslim world openly hails Hitler in the East and quietly hails Hitler in the West. Bennett is right. These monuments of hate and racism called mosques should be torn down. Such racial and religious bigotry accompanied with violent mandates is illegal under both hate crime laws and constitutional legislation. The freedom of religion does not include Islam's violent and oppressive militant commands but directly contradicts them. Bennett isn't intolerant of the intolerant ideology because he knows nothing about it but because he has studied its texts and Prophet's example. He understands that Islam repeatedly and clearly calls for the complete annihilation of all other religions and religious people, and to tolerate or support Islam is undeniably a form of Nazism all its own. Thank you for watching this video. What do you think about this? Share this on Facebook and Twitter along with your comments.